Hello, everyone, and welcome to Media's SourceForge podcast. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Bo Hamilton, Senior Editor and Multimedia Producer here at Slashdot and SourceForge, the world's most visited software comparison site where B2B software buyers compare and find business software solutions. Joining us today is Anders Willumsen, CEO of Eurekos, the global LMS company helping organizations reimagine their approach to external training. Anders, welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Bo, and thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. I want to just jump right into the questions, but really quickly beforehand, I want to just kind of lay some of the groundwork for what an LMS company is in case, our
Right.
listeners may not be as familiar with it.
Yeah.
Chances are, you've probably worked with an LMS company, maybe without realizing it. LMS stands for Learning Management System. And so an LMS company works to develop software platforms designed to facilitate online learning and training for all sorts of organizations, institutions, and businesses. Does that sound about right, Anders?
It sounds absolutely right. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And there are as many flavors of an LMS as you can imagine. Yeah.
Mm. Yes, I imagine there's a lot of competition. Um, with that said, with that groundwork laid for us, could you go ahead and just introduce yourself and share the story of how Eurekos was founded?
Yeah. So I joined Eurekos 5 years ago. Prior to that, I worked in the US for an American semiconductor company. And one of the reasons I joined Eurekos is that we were missing a software just like Eurekos for years. Um, so when I joined Eurekos, one of the things that appealed to me was the fact that it was actually founded 12, 13 years old. So it was still reasonably small, but it had its DNA from a very solid training consulting practice. So it originated inside a consulting firm, training company, and then about 5 years ago when I joined, we split it off, and it became kind of a single entity focused entirely on LMS and services, right?
Hmm. That's really interesting. Yeah, I love learning more about how a company was started, and I know that you have
Yeah,
quite the extensive background. Working with you mentioned the semiconductor um, company. You've worked in that industry. You've before we
yeah,
actually started this podcast, you mentioned you work with in the gaming industry, a
yeah,
company called HyperX, and
yeah,
I believe you also work in the real estate development
yeah,
industry.
yes,
How
yeah.
how would you say those industries have kind of translated over to Eurekos or your experience in those industries?
It's a great question because it's the first time ever, kind of, for me working within a software company. And
Mm,
there are obviously some challenges moving. You can't just transfer your experience from a hardware-based company like a gaming company, even was what I did at the end.
mm,
Um, but but still, you're trying to create a product um, that's there to solve problems or challenges for people and companies, right? Before it was a hardware product. In this case it's a software product. um, and in my case it was super interesting for me to start and work with Eurekos because I suddenly had a software product that I could use to help hardware companies or the software companies and so on, right? But I could actually use the experience, the challenges and the pain points that we experienced for all those years, also in real estate and many other verticals or this type of businesses. That's suddenly something I could help solve with Eurekos, right? With the software.
mm. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the solutions Eurekos offers as a LMS company?
So, it's about a 12, 13-year old piece of software. So, and it's evolved from initially um, bring in, what was it, 1,400 university educations had to go online. So that was the first project, if you will. And that's kind of was the foundation of the software. So it's basically, it now has a built-in authoring tool. So it allows you to create the trainings inside. It has a built-in customer event management flow built in, because one of a big set of our customers wanted to have every single part of the sales process, or the customer journey, want to have every aspect of that covered, which could be anything from managing virtual trainings to on premise trainings, classroom trainings, webinars, seminars, custom events, etc. So our software has kind of evolved so that it now has the ability, you can create content in there, you can create certificates in there, you can manage the certification processes, you can manage any type of learning in
Mm.
there. um, there's also now a built-in um, content translation module inside of it, because we found that so many of our customers had challenges being able to adopt their learning and their content globally to different languages. And so we built that as well, so that you can now clone and transform any training into 130 languages, as the platform itself also exists in the same languages.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, that's a huge component, right? Being multilingual and supporting as many
Yeah,
languages and clients as possible.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely plays a big role in learning, right?
Yeah, it does. If you can sit and navigate the software that you're operating in your own language, and following that, you actually get trained in not in English, which is in most cases people are okay with that. But there's still a lot of places around the world where the English as second language is not as strong.
Mm.
So it's a huge help that you suddenly can get local training, any type of certification or in that language, right?
Yeah, right. Because, um, I feel like our education system here, it offers a one size fits all approach to learning, and I know that there's the language barrier, and then there's just also the different language styles
Yeah,
for
yeah.
individuals how they absorb information. There are visual learners, there's auditory learners, readers and writers, and hands-on learners. I'm curious about how Eurekos facilitates personalized training journeys for its employees and its customers.
So that has kind of been the holy grail for a long time,
Hmm.
in terms of personalizing. So that means any employee or any customer anywhere in the value chain. It could be your first direct set of customers, your distributors or your agents, and then you could follow through them to resellers, integrators, service partners, and all the way to end users, right?
Mm.
Whether you deal with employees or you deal with customers, all the way to the indirect customers. The biggest challenge has been, well, how do you then create training, first of all, that's really engaging and that can really help you, um, but being able to manage it all the way is one challenge. The other one is, how do you make it personal? And
Mm.
unless you have an army of people who can sit and define and every single set of employees into subgroups, and so you can tag them and you can profile them and then apply training. Same thing with customers. Um, then, and most companies do not have those capabilities, or nor should they spend time on that. So we have developed now adaptive learning, which allows you to create a questionnaire from one to unlimited set of questions. And then based on the answers of each question, you can then attach micro learning A, B, C, D, and question one, and same thing on the next, and so on and so forth. So depending on how each person answers the questions, you are then automatically assigned that personalized learning path. Um, and so that gives you suddenly a fully automatic way of assigning personalized learning to anyone, both direct and indirect, employees or customers.
Hmm. That's really interesting. Yeah, I imagine um, every client has their own particular training challenge, right? That they have to kind of
Yeah,
overcome. Do you have a
yeah,
particular success story that you could highlight about how a client has leveraged Eurekos' learning management system to solve one of these challenges?
yeah. One of our oldest customers is a Japanese medical equipment manufacturer. So
Mm.
they do quite advanced products, both hardware and software. Um, so kind of as they've been a customer of ours for almost 10 years now, one of the things we had to do in order to both evolve with them, but also trying to figure out how do we solve their challenges, is that we had to figure out how do you get that advanced product knowledge and understanding of your products, both in terms of to your distributors because you are there in competition, right? And so how do they make
Mm.
sure, how to make sure that they understand your products better than competitors? But being able to do that indirectly was the first challenge. So how do you get all that information flowing through a distributor, then from that distributor flowing through to the next, you know, uh, part of the chain, and then all the way to the end user level. And in their case, they're serving hospitals around the world. Today is 6,500 hospitals
Oh,
and
wow.
their staff. So when you have a product, it takes about a month for a technician to be certified in a particular one of the more advanced products. It's a very long and rigorous process, and it has to happen without understanding who they are and not being able to communicate directly with them.
Mm.
But we have been able to solve that now, and over time, because of how we've done that, it has then kind of spread from first Germany, DACH, then to Europe, and then to the rest of the world. Um, so that today they use us in over 200 countries. And again, same thing with languages. Um, it also has come based on when you do business in 200 countries, it is not enough to have 20 languages or 30 languages. You need to be 130 plus, as many as you possibly can cover, right? Um, yeah. But based on that, they have increased, um, the product knowledge, the product engagement. They have minimized churn, and they have increased basically sales. We have a whole business case on that we're very happy to send to anyone.
Hmm.
Following, or you guys can do that. Yeah,
Is there really an industry that you work more closely with others? I know that this particular client is in the healthcare industry.
yeah.
Are Do you target any particular industry more than others?
We We actually work with quite a few different verticals, from global manufacturers or even local manufacturers, um, to software companies, nonprofits, governments, and so it's not like we have become specialized in one vertical only, because we have found that a lot of them, even though it's a different type of business, they same face a lot of the same challenges.
Mm.
So we have been able to apply our product and our knowledge to other verticals, but the largest for us is probably manufacturing, manufacturers, and then software companies are probably our largest sectors. Yeah,
So then you can kind of tap into some of your background too, eh?
yeah, yeah, exactly. We kind of have to, yeah, take our own medicine as well in that sense. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
So what you touched on some of the technologies and kind of underlying mechanisms behind Eurekos to help streamline your training and learning and knowledge sharing. What else would you say makes your platform stand out in this market?
I'm our founder and our kind of head of our product owner, right? Our visionary. His name is Nick. He often say that we are like a Lego plate, meaning
Mm.
that our LMS consists of many different types of solutions, combined, right? So you have content authoring, you have advanced onboarding, which is almost like a training management system. You have a customer event management piece to it. We also have resource library now in a knowledge base. And knowledge base is in itself also a separate software product. But when you combine all of it, you have every piece of content you can imagine, not just what you're assigning, and what you want to distribute, in terms of knowledge or training, or certification accreditation, but also search. So a lot of companies are spending a lot of energy on the training aspects, right, and education. But there's also, being able to have a repository of all that information. It's not just the training itself, but the assets that goes into every single little training. And that's what we can house in our knowledge base or a resource library, depending on how advanced you want it. Do you want articles as well, or do you want to connect research to that, and so on? So I think what makes us stand out is that we have so many systems in one. We call it just an LMS, a learning management system. Um, and then we have the ability to help them deliver globally. Um, and it could also be, for instance, in the US, you still, even though English is everyone's, it's a common language, obviously, in the US, you still have a lot of people living in the US who have English as a second language, and maybe another language is their preferred language, right? So being able to deliver in any language, content in any language, anywhere in the world, and then connecting e-commerce to it when needed, for if you're charging for your content and your delivery. Um, it's kind of what makes us stand out, and then ultimately our ability to make sure that the LMS is fully integrated. There's no point in having a great LMS, learning management system, if you cannot figure out, how to also take advantage of the data and the information you get out of it. The one thing is that you can certify and educate, and you get better performing employees, or happier employees and customers, better engagement, all that. It's actually that you can also learn from that. You can improve your content. You get the statistics and research on what works, what doesn't work, and you can feed that, or customer completion of certain trainings. You get that into your CRM system, vice versa for employees and the HR systems. Ultimately, we can take data from the LMS, move it over into an LRS, and connect that to Power BI or similar, so you get full insight, and you can make any type of analysis that you want. So I think our ability is that we have kind of a Lego plate that consists of many, many different types of systems in one, and that we can connect any other system to it as well. And we do that frequently for our customers.
Okay, so you're an all-in-one solution, and you offer the accessibility of all the different languages you provide.
Yeah.
I like that. Are there, you know, automation is huge. You touched on the importance of data and kind of extrapolating
Yeah.
as much meaning from the data you collect.
Yeah.
Are there, do you have any specific automation tools or machine learning algorithms or artificial intelligence that you're kind of adopting? That seems to be the new craze nowadays, right?
Yeah.
Have you been?
Yes. If you don't speak about AI, you're kind of an
I
outsider,
know.
right? Yeah. Um, it's so interesting because we are looking at many different types of AI, and we've been using it because for instance, to get content translation done right, so many of our customers had to go out and use local agencies and get that perfect adoption of their verbiage, to get their product names right, so that product name is not mistakenly suddenly translated, right?
Mm,
So we've been experimenting and done this for quite a few years, and actually you can train the machine learning and AI with NLM, and then natural language modeling, I think it's called. So that's something we've been experimenting with a lot. So you can use the customers' translation history and so forth. But there's obviously so many new forms of AI you can take advantage of to speed up content creation. You can use generative AI for text, for images, and so on. You can also use it to populate, the
mm,
software in itself. That's also something. But overall, there are so many solutions in the market today, and there are so many different and new things are coming up every single week. We're constantly evaluating, should we use this or that, or maybe now this and that. So but
Mm,
there's quite a few different things you still have to consider, which is there's private and public forms of AI. So the information you feed it, are you sitting on a lot of proprietary information as a company, um, and you do not really want to share that with your competitors, as an example? Well, then you really need to watch out what type of AI and LMS has connected is one. The other one is the carbon footprint, because very few of them don't care. They just want to get it out there and be first and so on, right? But it's
mm,
actually really important also to look into, well, how are they setting up their infrastructure, and what kind of impact do they have on, and how much do they pollute?
mm,
It's just like Bitcoin and all these virtual currencies. The same thing. They're using an enormous amount of power to generate that. And the same thing, of course, with AI. So you really have to be conscious about that. And then finally, the last thing is, and most important also, is there's no point in also creating things and integrating into our LMS if it's ultimately over time becomes incredibly expensive. So we also have to look forward and look at what kind of pricing models are being applied to these different types of AI, so that we don't create something, customers get started on it, and then suddenly 1, 2 years down the line, then you're looking at something that's prohibitively expensive for you to use, right?
mm,
Um, so we've seen many of our competitors immediately come out with chat GDP integrated, and the next one integrated, and so on, right? But we're taking our time, and we want to do it right, and we are doing a lot of research on it and doing a lot of tests right now with many different forms of AI. So,
mm.
so there's no, there will be something in terms of helping you, especially with content
Yeah,
creation and population, but exactly how and what is yet to to be seen, right?
right. Well, that's a great answer because you touched on a lot of interesting points there. I like how you mentioned the carbon footprint because that's something that you see some headlines, but I don't think people talk about it quite as much as they should.
Yeah.
Obviously, it draws a lot of power, and I know that some of the public facing AIs they're they cost more than it. They haven't figured out a profit model, right?
Yeah. And those that are
Is it
free will
Mm,
likely not continue to be free at some point either, because it's very
right?
expensive to run,
I know Google's still working out the kinks. They're trying to figure out how to
right?
monetize it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's and then
So
also with imagine with your Recos dealing with education, you really want to try to eliminate any sort of AI hallucinations, right? Because that could really
exactly,
not
that's
not be good.
absolutely, I agree with you. We have seen so many examples of information that has been fed and then
Mm,
repopulated somewhere else and not being accurate. Um,
mm,
so it truly also depends on what is the source of the AI, like how are they training the AI, right?
mm,
Um,
right.
yeah,
Which no one knows. It's oftentimes just very secretive, and even a lot of the engineers and developers don't know how the system works, right?
exactly,
But that's a
exactly.
different conversation.
Yeah, very, very different, very exciting. Yes.
What are some future developments we can expect from Eurekos? Are there any new products, features, or any new major updates on the horizon that you're excited about?
Quite a lot, but I think right now the most exciting one for us to solve is, uh, there is some sort of, what to call it? I know the Danish word for it. Uh, Tiredness. So every
Fatigue.
fatigue. That's perfect word. Thank you. Yeah, fatigue.
Mm,
Exactly. Um, as an employee or as a customer, the company wants to give you as much as information as possibly can. And there's
mm,
also a lot of mandatory training, and there's both the obligatory training, you have to do this, and there are things you feel you have to take, and so on, right? So one thing is obviously coming back to the personalized training, very important, right? So you get what you need and when you need it, and not constant repetitive training, um, coming out there.
Mm.
That's very important. So you don't have to sit and repeat the same training over and over again if you actually already know the the issue, they know about the content, right? So what we're doing is that we are releasing soon the first out of four phases of adaptive learning. This means that when you're doing all the questionnaires, it can be be onboarding or later to understand how well versed are you in an area or topic or knowledge, right? Then
Mm.
as you answer and you do start taking the trainings and you get some quizzes and interact, we have 40 different interactive elements that you can bring in over the information. So as they then stop, for instance, in a video, take a quiz or being questioned on some things, do some small tests, then you constantly checking to see do they understand it, right? And if not, at some point the software itself will then start to kick you out on a new learning path to again to strengthen those areas. And then once you understand that, then you come back again and you can continue. That is one thing that is going to help a lot, and that's just phase one. There are four phases to it. So that will definitely help so many companies and organizations in terms of being able to give them the right information at the right time. And so you don't overwhelm constantly and having to do something that you really don't want to repeat, right? Um,
Right.
but the other thing is there are obviously information you have to give, and not everyone are excited about it, especially not customers, right? They want to use your product, but they don't really want to spend a lot of time training, you know.
Mhm.
So we have a lot of customers that have challenges with that. We have some big brands that are also in retail and with distribution partners and so on. And so what we're building is an incentive and gamification um, functionality. We're building that into the LMS so that you are being rewarded now for taking it. And each of our customers can decide what they want to have a preference on and set it in the software so that you can do you want them to constantly recertify themselves? Do you want them to not just take what they're being asked to do, but actually or required to do, but also any other type of training to really soak in the knowledge you want to give them, right? Um,
Mm.
so that will lead then to gamification, points and badges, and leaderboards, and so on, and then even uh, translate that into physical products or prices, etc., in whichever way you want to incentivize them. So there's been a lot of focus for many years in terms of let's make sure we incentivize sales, right? To make sure we incentivize growth, right? In this
Mm.
case, it's about incentivizing and driving the behavior so that you can get a much higher adoption and engagement on that training that you want to provide people, right? So that's something to be very excited about. And as we know, it's a big challenge out there because again, there are systems that does that separately. But again, as always, it's not fully integrated and the system doesn't talk and it's not really with an emphasis on training and learning um, that so far the systems that has been built, right? And that's what we want to create now. So we're very
Okay.
excited about that part. Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. Yeah, I
yeah,
like the leaderboards and various incentives you
yeah,
mentioned.
yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it's something not all cultures or organizations or companies or divisions, there could be a difference. It could be employees hate it. Yeah, we don't want to be compared to others, right? We don't want leaderboards, so we have to switch them off. But customers love it, right? They're very sales minded. If it's a distributor, you're trying to, imprint on the salespeople, right? Sell my
Mm.
product, right? And know it well. So they may like that competition because that's the sales culture typically, right? So you have to be able to still adjust the system and configure it, and that's one of the biggest advantages of ILMS is that you can completely differentiate that inside of the platform. So you can have one setup and structure for either employees or for outside customer groups. So it can be by region, by country, by type of customer, by anything, and you can set that up individually, right? Um, so you don't have one uniform strategy that has to apply to everyone.
Right. Yeah, that's great because it goes all back to the everyone's different. Everyone, each client's different. they're not going to like every feature. They're not going to use every feature. So you
No,
have to kind of, make it personalized.
absolutely. And that's one of the things in we have now 13 roles in the software. I guess is another thing that makes us stand out. And most customers use 4 to 5 roles. You have a platform admin and a content creator and a instructor and so on, right? Participants. But the software will change depending on which role it is and adjust, and you can adjust what they see so that you don't, again, not just the training itself, but also navigation, that you don't have, you know, 20 different choices on the left side of your participant. It should be very simple to navigate.
How does Eurekos stay just ahead of the competition in terms of innovation and customer satisfaction? Is there anything else specific that you comes to mind?
We have, like you even said earlier, right? There is an enormous competition in the LMS market, right? It's 1,000
Mm,
plus companies at least, and I'm sure there are 50 more next week, right? So we see the biggest competition coming from American companies. There's also a bunch in Europe, of course, but I think the most some of the best companies are those who originate from the US, because they simply have such a massive home market that they can test and grow in fast, right?
mm,
Um, so what do we do? I think as we are from Denmark and a much smaller market, we found that we have to grow globally, right? And that's what we have done. So we already do business in 24 countries, from Denmark, and where we're running it here. I'm setting up offices hopefully soon. Oh, let me turn the camera a little bit. There
there we
is
go. Yeah.
hopefully the next new office in California. Will be in that area where I used to work and live.
Nice.
Um, but the it's basically we have to be more flexible. We have to be more agile. We have to provide a superior customer service, which we do, um, and um, and then our our platform, I think, is incredibly efficient compared to many other platforms, right? And it's something we have to continue to focus on. So rather than rushing out, for instance, with AI, and try to follow those of our competitors who have already done that, we are putting a lot of emphasis into understanding what is exactly we should do and when and how we can make it most efficient. Um, and because the ultimate goal is that the customers have to save on resources. They have to be able to automate anything and everything that possibly can automate, even things they didn't think they could automate. That's our role, right? Being able to do that. So we spend a lot of time in questioning why they do what they do, trying to understand the business, trying to understand their processes, trying to understand their environment, their ecosystem, and why are you getting an LMS and what do you hope to get out of it, and how do you want to, and how do you connecting it. So it's not just about the LMS itself, right, and what it can do. It's also about how do you use it and how does it work inside of the company or organization, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but and then beyond that, of course, it's coming up with new ways and reimagine how can you do certain things, right? So, and
Mm,
the good thing is we see now a lot of competitors doing AI, and it's great. We see how the market's reacting to that while we are still doing a lot of research. And so by the time we do it, we will very likely have a different approach on it, and
hmm.
hopefully one that'll be more efficient.
Right. That's great. Yeah. You want to, more than anything, you just want to understand your customer, your client, and foster a good relationship and figure out
Yeah,
what works for them personally. You don't want to get
yeah,
too lost in the weeds with this future, innovation, future like artificial intelligence, which is still working out its kinks, right?
yeah. And above all, it's a superior customer service, like being able to respond very quickly and not just here's an email, and then you go back and forth an email a few times. I've done that so many times with
Mm-hmm.
customer service, traveling or communicating myself with other companies, being a customer, right? And it drives me nuts. You
Mm,
have to be able to get proper response right away, something that's useful, or a little recorded video if we don't already have it covered in our knowledge base that we provide our customers, right? But it has to be really truly great help at the right time as well,
Mhm.
and quick, because if they have an issue, then we know it's urgent, right?
Right. Yeah, customer
Yeah,
service is unfortunately, such an afterthought for a lot of businesses.
yeah,
So I'm glad that you guys are focusing on that because it's so important. It
yeah.
really is.
It
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 makes me
is.
think of I recently got solar panels for my home. It's something I've always wanted for years and years. Where I'm west facing, get so
Yeah,
much sun, and I was researching all these different companies, and it really came down to I could save money by going for a company with terrible customer service, but decent
right.
hardware. I could save some
Yeah,
money, or I could go with a company with it costs a little more,
yeah, yeah,
but they have great reviews, great customer service,
yeah.
and that's ultimately the company that I feel more confident in, right, long term, especially when these things are going to be on my roof for 20 years.
A hundred
Um,
percent. Exactly right. It's knowing that the one day when you have challenges, and because obviously companies and organizations evolve, and it's not always that you go in the exact same direction, right? So at some point, maybe the
mm,
process is a little different, or maybe they have a high, circulation of staff, and new people are coming in. They don't really know how to use it. They have some issues. They have to solve it. So it's all about that, being able to provide very quick, very great customer service, right? When you need it. I absolutely agree. I pick vendors in the same way myself, right?
yeah, yeah,
Maybe sometimes pay a little extra, but getting a better service.
yeah. It's finding that right balance, right?
Yeah,
Because there's a
yeah,
point where it's like customers, they want to save as much money as they can, but
yeah,
so it's hard to really put a monetary value on customer service, but
yeah,
I mean, objectively, it's can be really priceless
yeah,
depending on the
uh, uh,
situation that arises.
yeah, 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 exactly.
So we're coming down to our last couple of questions I have for you.
Yeah.
This one's kind of fun. So all leaders, they want the opportunity to tell customers one big thing. And so if you could shout it from the rooftop, what would you say is one big thing in relation to Eurekos that you would like to tell potential customers?
The one big thing is that we are truly not a software company. You shouldn't consider us as a software company, but as a partner. And that plays into every single thing that we do. It is not just the fact that we have a very good piece of software, mentioned by many analysts, not just my own words, but it's everything. It's the service, it's the advice we provide, and the continued dialogue we have with our customers along the way. We provide unlimited support, um, for any customer at any given time. And that's one of the key things about working with us, is that you will never ever be left in a situation where we are unresponsive or not able to help you with your challenge, whatever it may be, um, and that you always will have a partner uh, in us.
Great. That's a great answer.
Yeah,
I don't even have any follow ups. That's such a great answer.
yeah.
Well, before we wrap this up, where can people find out more about Eurekos and get in touch with you?
Three things. You can go on our website, eurekos.com. Um, you can shoot me an email. Find me on LinkedIn, shoot me an email. Love to hear from you. I always take any direct contact and any conversation with anyone wanting to hear about us. Um, or you can shoot us an email, on info@eurekos.com. And that will probably be the best ways of getting hold of us.
Info@eurekos.com. Okay. So eurekos.com and then Anders Willumsen at LinkedIn.
Yeah, yeah,
Fantastic.
exactly. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time, Anders. This has been absolutely fantastic. I think this has been really insightful for our listeners, and we'd love to have you back one of these
Love
days.
to, and I hope we haven't lost all the listeners at this point. But it was great to talk to you, Bo, and thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. Thank you. Well, thank you all for listening to the Media video podcast. I'm your host, Bo HD. Make sure to subscribe to stay up to date with all of our upcoming B2B software related podcasts. I will talk to you in the next one. Thank you so much, Anders. It's been a
Likewise,
pleasure.
you too, Bo.